All right, we're ready to go. We'll call the meeting to order at 6:01. First item on the agenda is roll call.
Todd McCulloch.
Here.
David Kennedy.
Here.
Tricia Brown. Kristen Runge.
Here.
Al Dassow.
Here.
Jeff Tooth.
Here.
Abigail Zillner.
Here. Next item on the agenda is minutes. Are there any corrections or changes? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve? All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3 is public comment. Do we have anybody online who would like to make a comment?
No.
She's present, right?
She's present. So we do not have anyone online.
All right, and no one in the audience, so we will have public comment presentations. And our presentations today are from MACOC, Madison Area Community Land Trust, and SHECSA on community land trust in Wisconsin. And I would like to thank both Kelly and Olivia for being here tonight and presenting to us online. Very much appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day today to help us out. So Laura, did we have an order to move over?
Yeah, we're to figure out where my cursor went.
We've got some new technology, Kelly and Olivia. Our new old technology, our primary recording system is not working. I am too. Yeah. Very
Okay, are you all sorted?
Yeah. So we're going to start out with Kelly. Kelly Westland is with UW Extension. She's also with, and I apologize if I get this name wrong, the Chequamegon Bay United Interest Land Trust, which is a newer land trust. And then we also have Olivia Williams from the Madison Area Community Land Trust. But Kelly has kind of an introduction to land trust presentation that she's going to do. So if you want to go ahead.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you all very much for the opportunity and for the invitation. I was also glad to see that Olivia was joining us tonight because she's been a great resource for me as well. The check built, and that was definitely a valiant effort with the Chequamegon. It's not an easy word to spit out. But yeah, it's the newest one that has been incorporated in Wisconsin. So we're still in early days of sorting some of our policies and actually acquiring our first home that will be put in trust. So that's pretty exciting. But if I can go ahead and share my screen, I'll pull up. I've got a slide deck that's sort of the CLT 101. There are a lot of communities across Wisconsin that have been exploring this model, and I'm more than happy to share this information. Let's see. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, then let's go ahead and of course, once it's on the screen, it's going to move a little bit slower. Sorry, folks. There we go. Again, I'll probably skip over some of these things just because there's a lot of detail that maybe you don't quite need at this point. But so an introduction to community land trusts. What is it? A good question to start with. Typically, a nonprofit community-based organization that takes private property, usually residences, out of the speculative real estate market with the goal of preserving it with long-term affordability. These come in all shapes and sizes, these types of organizations, so they can really be adapted to meet the needs that you have in your community. But they, for the most part, have a few things in common. The affordable price for a home in the trust is based on that specific geography that it's serving. As you can probably guess, the homes up in Ashland and Bayfield counties are going to be very differently priced than what's down in Dane County, where Olivia and you all are. It's also resale restricted to income eligible buyers. And that's one of the other ways that our two land trusts differ a little bit. Up here, we struggle with the missing middle housing as well as housing that's affordable to lower income people. So our land trust serves folks up to 120% of area median income. And I know that Olivia's is more like 80. So one of the cool things that is of particular interest in this part of the world is that land trust homes can never be vacation homes or short-term rentals. In Bayfield County right now, 44% of all of our housing units are considered vacant, and the vast majority of those are in use as either short-term rentals or just second homes, vacation homes for folks. So it really is a big deal.
We're seeing your notes page. Is it possible to?
You are seeing my notes page.
Not the full screen view.
We're not getting the full screen view.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, now I lost, I can't see any of you anymore, so now's the time to make faces. I've got this is just a quick map to give you a sense of where the established land trusts are around the state and the other efforts that we're aware of, at least, that are kind of popping up at the same time. These have seen a lot of growth since 2018. There are more than 350 community land trusts across the country. And I just wanted to kind of highlight this report. Some of you may have seen the Governor's Health Equity Council that came out last year specifically called out community land trusts as a good way to help promote homeownership and to lead overall to better health outcomes for folks that are struggling with stable housing situations. So to kind of back up and give you an idea of how they work. Our land trust would buy a property, right? But we separate the land from the structure that is on that, from the house. An income eligible buyer has to get a mortgage. So they do have to go to the bank, they have to get a loan, and they get that mortgage for the home only. Now say that home is valued at $200,000, but that buyer can only get a mortgage for, $150,000. The CLT will make the initial affordability investment that helps to cover that gap for that buyer, putting it kind of within their reach when otherwise, what's available in the market might not be in range for them. So there is a ground lease and a resale formula that helps to ensure that this home will now stay affordable for all future buyers. And that initial subsidy, that affordability investment made at the very beginning, stays with that house forever. It's not like other benefit programs where folks can access grant dollars or something, or long-term loan dollars as down payment assistance, and then repay that when they go to sell the home. This funding stays with the home so that as that home increases in value over time, so does the value of that subsidy. Between that and the resale formula that is enforced via the ground lease, that helps to keep this portfolio of land trust homes affordable in perpetuity. I hope that's all. I hope that makes sense. I guess I should also encourage folks to either drop questions in the chat if you're able, or just pipe up and ask them if there's something that catches your interest as we go. This is a question I get all the time, how do we fund these kinds of organizations? And again, because they're so flexible and adaptable, there are examples in Wisconsin where the land trust is under the umbrella of a community action agency or a community development authority or something to that effect. And of course, the standalone organizations, but they end up finding money in all kinds of different places. Sometimes it's with private grants and donations. It might be funding from local units of government, other grants. There are examples where employers who have had issues recruiting and retaining employees because of the housing shortage, those mission-driven folks or those employers might be willing to make investments in ensuring that they have a portfolio of affordable housing in their community to better support their workforce. And we've also started to look at some other options. There's a land trust in Minnesota that has an in-house development entity and a real estate brokerage. So they're generating additional revenues from offering services outside of the organizations, but they're also saving themselves some money by doing a lot of that work in-house. It's pretty cool. And this is something that actually I thank you all for giving me the chance to look at Dane County. It's very different, obviously, than it is up here, but I want to talk just a little bit about, affordable. It's a term that is used often, and it seems there are an infinite number of connotations that come with it. But based on the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development definition, we should not be spending more than 30% of our income on gross housing costs, including our utilities, insurance, taxes, that sort of thing. So if you're spending more than 30% of your income on housing, it is not affordable. You are burdened by that expense. And if I look at the recommended fair market rent rates that HUD sets, you can kind of see here what those rents are per month and what the income would be for a person to be able to afford that market rate rent in Dane County. And then I kind of take that a step further and looked through some information about single family home sales in Dane County. Last year, the median sale price was $410,000 for a home in Dane County. And if we look at the average 30-year fixed rate mortgage in Wisconsin right now, it's at about 7.5%. There are a couple calculations here that I think are I know it's a lot of numbers for one screen, I apologize, but if you are somebody who can come to the table with that 15% down, $61,500 on a $410,000 house, then you can end up with a monthly housing payment or mortgage payment of just over $3,000. If you don't have that down payment, it's going to be closer to $4,000. So if we kind of, draw that out over 12 months and then figure that that's going to be 30% or less of income, these two incomes on the end is what you would need for a household income to be able to get a mortgage for that median priced single family home. Unfortunately, the median household income in Dane County is significantly less. So $84,000, close to $85,000. So this is something that I just saw today, actually, and that's over these 5 years between 2017 and 2022. Median home sale prices increased by 53%, while household incomes only went up by 19.7%. So that should give you a sense of, this problem that we're continuing to see. And kind of going back to those numbers I gave you before, if the median household income in Dane County is just under $85,000, then that leaves you roughly $2,100 a month for housing, affordable housing budget. So accounting for the median price single family home there and the interest rate, in order for you to get a mortgage in Dane County as a median income earner, household income, for a median priced home, you'd have to come to the table with nearly half of the total cost of that home in hand. $185,000 down payment is what it would take to get a monthly mortgage payment that is 30% or less of your income. So I'll go fairly quickly over these as well, but there are some programs that exist to help make buying a home more affordable, which is great, but they all have some drawbacks when compared to the land trust model. So when you get down payment assistance, for example, without the resale restriction, over time, as that house kind of grows in value, then you're going to need a bigger and bigger subsidy each time that home changes hands for a qualifying individual or a buyer, I should say. When we have the model that is employed in lots of parts of Wisconsin with revolving loan funds, where those resources are recovered at the time of sale and then put back into the home, you still see a similar issue. It's great that you're reusing a lot of those dollars to benefit the next family, but it still doesn't address the long-term affordability issue. Again, with CLT, once you make that initial first subsidy, it stays with the home forever. And between that and the resale restriction, makes sure that those homes stay affordable. And you can see that you don't need to keep re-subsidizing them as it changes hands going forward. So, and this is just sort of illustrating the same thing. To kind of circle back to how it works, it's the model sometimes sounds more complicated than it is, and I'm sure that Olivia has said it enough times. She might have the most simple way of explaining it to people who are unfamiliar. But The CLT, we make that investment, it stays with the home buyer still gets a mortgage, and these are resale restricted with those ground leases in place to make sure that it's always a primary residence and that it's always affordable going forward. How different is it from regular home ownership? It is admittedly not something that everyone is interested in. I know that there are some folks that feel very strongly about owning the land beneath their home as well, and that's fine. But this model isn't for everyone. The people mostly served by community land trusts are folks that may not be able to become homeowners on the open market, just given the prices and how quickly property values have outpaced incomes. So they typically serve buyers who can qualify for a mortgage, but otherwise can't afford the available market-priced homes. There is often an orientation process to make sure that folks really understand, the resale restrictions so that, 10 years from now, they don't come back and say, no, I want to put this up for maximum profit on the open market. They have to understand that there's like a pay it forward element of buying one of these homes. And then you pay the affordable price in exchange for agreeing to pay it forward. So what we know about this model is that it provides a lot of opportunity for CLT homebuyers to go on to buy a market rate home the next time that they're in the market. And it's also a great tool for protecting folks who are facing other difficulties from foreclosure proceedings, because as the CLT has the ground lease, they're going to get notification and be able to intervene before it gets too late. There are also first-time home buyers, people of color, getting more access to these opportunities than they have had in the past, which I think is a good thing. And they're, again, just infinitely customizable. So I went through a lot of information there, and I will share this slide deck via email. All of the links, all of these logos are links to these other organizations for more information. And yeah, I guess then I will stop there and stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Olivia to talk, I guess, a little bit about the Madison version of this, unless you folks have some questions at this point. I feel like that was fire hose. It was a lot. Sorry.
So the land that goes, the building that goes in to the land trust, and a buyer buys just the improvement, not the land, are both components still subject to real estate tax? Given that the land is in a nonprofit, I don't know what that means in your context, but is it a 501c3 or is it some other? I'm not sure of that.
We are a 501c3. And I know Olivia can talk about this a little bit because it does vary from place to place, right? But generally speaking, the person purchasing the home is responsible for the real estate taxes on both the land and the improvements. In some cases, if the nonprofit wanted to pursue tax exempt status on that property, they could, but my understanding is that it's on a case-by-case basis. That would have to be a decision that is in consultation with local government. And oftentimes the general consensus is that it's just better for the relationship if the local government doesn't lose out on resources because they're supporting an organization like this.
Can I chime in a bit? It depends on, the local assessor's office and how they interpret state law. But within the city of Madison, the city assessor has interpreted the state law around this to be that they really need to reduce the property taxes for these homeowners based on the actual value of the home. So our homeowners pay taxes that have a greatly reduced kind of cost. So they're typically saving $2,000 or $3,000 from what they might have paid if the home were market rate.
And I think it's worth, teasing out that this is a conversation that we've been having up here quite a bit as well. If there are two houses that are identical side by side, and one is a CLT home and one is just regular open market, then by the time those sell and one is subsidized but also deed restricted to remain affordable in perpetuity, then is it fair to charge both homeowners the fair market version of what the taxes would be when one has significantly less equity that they can take out of that home than the other?
I'm not sure what that means, but in the definition of real estate tax assessment, it's a function of marketability of that property. If you have a restriction on that property, that by the very fact it has restriction says it has less value to the potential seller and buyer, which means the real estate taxes have to be lower in that context because of those restrictions. On the other side, I'm still confused as to if the land trust is a 501c3 and it owns the land, it has nothing to do with the person that owns the building. Those are two separate groups of people. In the land trust, 501c3, they did have to pay real estate taxes on the land. My understanding is under 501c3 status in the state of Wisconsin, that land is exempt from real estate tax. So it would just be the house that pays the real estate tax, not the land. And if it is just the house, then the 30% of AGI just came down and the mortgage could go up and we fall within the context of that 30% of AGI. So I don't know, when you talk about some of the stuff, I get confused by some of the lingo, only because my understanding, could be wrong, that anything owned by 501c3 is exempt from real estate tax. And that's owned by the land trust, not by the buyer of the house.
I do think I'll chime in. Kelly and I were asking, you were there too, Lauren, at the NEDA conference, and the Housing Trust out of Milwaukee talked about this, because they're strong advocates for reduced or no real estate taxes on the land. But I think, as you mentioned, Kelly, there is that relationship with local government. You could hear it in the room when people in Milwaukee said that. And the people on my table who were not from the Madison area was like had this great enthusiasm for it, and then they said you can reduce taxes, and they're like, oh, we'll never get that accepted locally. So I do think it is oftentimes about that relationship that you can negotiate with the local government on what your taxes is like for the rest of the tax base.
And I'm not sure, because that's a legal definition.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty much black and white. So I'm not sure what the issue is. So it's kind of getting a lawyer in to talk about that 501c3 status and what property it owns, because I think it's a critical number. So the other thing, can you have outside investors in the CLT? I know you can't be the 501c3.
There's not a good reason for us to do that, I guess. We need subsidy that we don't have to pay back. So there's not a good return for investors, I guess. If I'm being, honest about it, it's not a money-making scheme. It's providing permanently affordable housing. So it's kind of a, semi public-private partnership sort of thing is what really makes it work rather than private investment.
Though I will just add that one of the things that we're exploring up here is a partnership with an organization called Legacy Works. They have been kind of in that slow capital field related to conservation easements and those kinds of land trusts. And they're just now starting to explore, it's sort of this, they build up a private equity fund of mission-driven, slow return folks that are willing to be the first loss on a deal. And it's, something that people have to be willing to wait for. You're not going to make a ton of money, but if you really care about affordable housing as an issue, especially, close to home, then they set up these funds that we could tap into as even just a pool of capital that we can use for new development, for doing some rehab stuff. But yeah, Olivia's right. It does require subsidy, and borrowing money that we have to pay interest on is not really a good way to run a CLT. But if you have a partner organization like this that can do that sort of fund management and provide a pool that we can tap into, then it seems really promising. But we're in early days on that too.
Yeah, for construction lending, that makes sense. Yeah.
I think it relates to the developer. If the property is going to not be there, the developers, what's the incentive for them to develop that development if part of it is going to be, segments of it is going to be village owners?
I'm sorry, I'm having a difficulty hearing folks.
what's the incentive to a developer if they aren't going to own the land?
Owners, if they sell the land to the village, have whatever place they have, the village has to agree.
Do they sell the land to it would be a 501c in this case? And you're doing, Kelly, am I correct that you guys are doing existing homes? You're buying existing homes and not doing new construction yet?
I'm sorry, I can't hear. What?
Are you doing new construction or are you doing existing homes?
Well, our original plan was to start with acquisition rehab, thinking that was low-hanging fruit. But as conversations have progressed, especially even some with WIDA, as far as the kinds of projects that they're inclined to be more supportive of, it's looking like new development might be a more beneficial track to go down for the CLT, but we're too early to have started that yet. I know that the Madison area has done development before. I don't know if you've got anything to add.
Maybe because I'm closer to the mic, it might pick it up a little better. Just a second. We're waiting to Kristen to figure something out. The question was, in terms of getting developers to agree to do this kind of development, what's their incentive if we're talking about possibly lower land prices? Are they selling the land to the whatever organization is doing this development? Is the organization purchasing the land from the developer?
Often we are the developer, and we do have to find land to develop on. So that is a definitely growing challenge in our housing market. So, we've been able to recently get an option to purchase on land at the Voigt Farm, which is on the east side of Madison, because the master developer who's buying that whole farm, they just went through their zoning and platting, and it really helped with their argument for why they should, get all the permissions to develop some market rate housing, some tax credit housing, et cetera, is that they were selling land to us cheaply to do home ownership. So affordable home ownership. That was something that a lot of the kind of neighbors and people in the area wanted to push them to do more. So that was one, that's one incentive, I guess, is it might help if there is a big site with developers who can sell off land. It makes them look better to get through their entitlements process, honestly. So that's one way. We've got our biggest chunk of land we've got in a while, but we've also acquired land from friendly sellers. You can get a tax deduction for like a bargain sale to a nonprofit, but also we've gotten land from the city of Madison, who's just done RFPs on certain parcels. So it's kind of, and we've also bought, on the open market with realtors and whatnot. So there's a variety of ways we can figure it out.
So, I'm sorry.
Other questions?
Yeah, I guess maybe, can you guys give us just like no community land trust exists. How do you get to the point where you're now able to transfer it to someone who's looking for affordable housing? How do you get from A to B?
Is that a deed restriction kind of a thing, Olivia? Or like without the nonprofit as the holder of the land and the partner in that ground lease? Is that what you're asking?
I guess what I'm asking is, so like if we hypothetically say we're looking to set something like this up, what do you do to get from having nothing in place to being at a point where you can start serving people who are looking for affordable housing, whether that's through development or through acquisition?
I would say start by talking to us because we serve Dane County as a whole. So we already exist and we have 4 staff and, an operating budget that works and we have policies. And right now we have only been able to develop in the city of Madison just because that's where the funding has been. But we're actively looking to expand and we've been having a number of conversations and we were part of the regional housing strategy, which named Community Land Trust and named us, as like a strategy for expanding affordable home ownership. And so I mean, I know I'm coming from a Madison area CLT perspective, but I do think there's a lot of benefit to working with existing CLTs because the overhead of administrating these things is really significant, and it's possible to get into trouble, just being able to sustain staffing and all of that. So if you're able to work with an existing CLT that is succeeding and growing, it's going to be the best, fastest option. But Kelly's working on starting one, so you could probably talk about that process.
See, and I would have said, yeah, talk to Olivia because like, why reinvent the wheel if you already have this wonderful existing organization? And here where we have since it's been about a year since we recruited our board and started drafting bylaws and work with a consultant to do all of our various policies and that sort of thing, and to actually get our 501c3 status. But as we're now preparing to hire our first staff person, we are doing that, even though we have our own 501c3 status, but we're doing that as with a fiscal sponsor. So our regional CAP agency that already has a bunch of staff and all the administrative stuff in place for payroll and benefits and all that kind of stuff, we're leaning on them until we can get to a point where we have enough staff and enough just, of a portfolio to justify doing all of that in-house. So it's going to be kind of a, they're supporting little baby bird as we try to take off and make this thing fly.
Maybe I can refine my question a little bit. I'm specifically talking about how it's been related to like what Jeff and Al were asking about is like, you don't have any community land trust set up. Somehow land is acquired with a home and then split apart.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you get to that point? So is the 501c or whatever entity purchasing the land and the home and then doing the legal to split it apart, they maintain holding the land and then selling just the structure? Is that my understanding that correctly?
Yeah, basically if there's an existing home on the land, we would rehab it and make sure it's up to a really good quality and then just sell the home. So the deed is just for the home and we issue a ground lease. So it's very clear, who's owning what and what everyone's rights and responsibilities are. It's actually, pretty simple. It's just a bunch of legal documents. So we don't have to do anything actively to separate the land and the house, besides just writing on the deed that it's for the house only.
Yes. I have a question about owner equity. So you said pay it forward and reduce equity. So what is the calculation or what are the kind of numbers that we're talking about as far as the person maybe there 10 years, so they built up some kind of equity, I would guess, but how much is that compared to a normal house sale?
So I don't know if you've got something handy, Olivia, but I'll just say, like, again, that slide that I showed where housing prices have gone up 53% in the last 5 years. In theory, if you wanted to put your house on the market, maybe you can manage to sell it for double what you paid for it. That's not going to happen in a CLT home. So the documents that we have drafted up in our policy, it's a 1% per year that you're in the home is the equity that you can get. And it's a little more complicated than that based on, what the home was valued at, what the subsidy size was. But Olivia, I know that you have a lot more practice with this than I do.
Yeah, our resale formula is the same way. So, the biggest difference is people are paying into the principal in their mortgage rather than just paying rent. And so research has shown that the average renter saves $100 per year on average. And so our homeowners are saving, you know, if you separate the principal and interest of a mortgage payment, that equity in their principal is all theirs, plus 1% interest per year. Plus we can add value for capital improvements on the home, so remodels and things like that. We do have a policy to add some equity value to the resale price. So it's something between rental and conventional home ownership. It's just not the same thing as market rate conventional home ownership, but it's this chance to start saving outside of renting, and to have fixed mortgage payments is a really big deal for stability for people. So we did a survey of all of the residents in our 62 homes recently and found that on average, our current residents have 58,000 saved just in their principal. So just think of that compared to what you can save as a renter. It's pretty significant, especially if you're wanting to buy on the conventional market. That can help down payment.
Other questions?
Yeah, and I have a lot of questions.
Well, Olivia's going to do a presentation.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. But I did attend the Madison presentation on the affordable housing, workforce housing, and I read through the 189 pages as well as the executive summary on that. When I walked away from that, I was confused because it didn't put any of the pieces together. I put the pieces together in a schematic. So I've been through, I didn't know how the land trust works yet, but now you kind of filled in a lot of the gaps in my schematic. And how you get the land and how you separate it, all that kind of stuff, I have all of it. So I understand what's going on. I just don't know how what you have that overlaps with what I have.
We'll figure that out. Yeah.
What do you have?
I have a diagram of all as to how, I mean, the key is you got to get the land, and how do you get the land? Assuming you got to pay fair market value, or you may get a spit and pay something less than fair market value. That's where I asked the question about the investors. You may have to bring another entity in that brings in investors to buy the land, give them that 5-6% return, and then we factor that into the equations. And I have the diagram of how I would work that. I don't have the numbers yet because I need to understand some of these things that are going about. I have the diagram.
Well, I'd be curious to see where the interest comes from, because in our experience with it, that we need a subsidy between 150 and 200,000 per home just to buy down that land value, and then that stays permanently affordable. So it's kind of like no one ever sees the value, the growing value of that land. It's just kind of like kept in the land trust for the benefit of all future owners. So there's no, for anyone who buys the land, there's not in our current model a way for them to get a return from that.
Other questions before we go to Olivia? Thank you so much, Kelly. I will see you tomorrow in Cornucopia. So
I'm going to stick around and listen to Olivia.
Thanks for everyone's great questions. It's always fun. I feel like community land trusts really like get everyone thinking, and in this great heady space that just exposes all of our nerdiness. It's fun.
It does. It really does.
Yeah. So thanks for asking your hard questions. So I'm Olivia Williams from the Madison Area Community Land Trust. I like to share that I actually studied community land trust in my PhD, and I finished that in 2017. I had a few years where I wasn't doing this kind of work, and then I just ended up right back in it and have been the executive director here since 2020. And since then, we've been doing a lot of growing and really establishing ourselves and our ability to do housing development again after kind of a lull period, and growing our staffing. And right now we're really doing this kind of outreach and like starting to work with Dane County more and communities around Dane County. So I'm really happy to be here and appreciate you doing Zoom because I have had meetings all day in town. So appreciate being able to be here virtually, but would love to meet you in person someday too. So our organization was founded in 1991, and our bylaws, to my knowledge, have always said that our service area is all of Dane County. That said, all of our homes right now are in the city of Madison. So we have 62 homes in our land trust. And because of the resale formula that's kept those homes affordable, we have served 123 families over the life of our organization with those homes. That means that any affordability investment that's been put into those homes from HUD dollars and the city's Affordable Housing Fund, those dollars have doubled in impact because they're serving multiple families as those homes resell. And so this map shows where a lot of our developments are. We've done condos and single family. We've done new construction and acquisition rehab. A lot of people are most familiar with Troy Gardens on Madison's north side, which has co-housing townhomes, and we also own the land under the farm and the community gardens there, which we lease to Rooted to manage that. But the rest of our portfolio is all home ownership units. And at least 1/3 of our board is always residents from our program. And we also have a stewardship committee to keep our homeowners really involved in decision making and connected to each other, and make sure that they're connected with us for post-purchase support, because we do a lot of that with our residents. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And we've been able to serve families ranging from 30 to 80% of area median income. And our upper limit so far has been 80% AMI. This is just some of the homes we've developed. Troy Gardens is on the bottom left. There's near there some single family homes on Camino del Sol. Those are on the upper left is what those look like. On the top right is another condo association we developed called Anniversary Court, and those are also they have shared wall units. And then towards the bottom right, there are several acquisition rehab homes that we've developed, just to show some variety of the types of projects we've done. They're typically, it's been easier for us lately to do smaller site projects and acquisition rehab. That's kind of all over and based on what's available. But our next project, as I mentioned, will be more in the range of 15 to 20 units at the Voigt Farm on Madison's east side over the next couple years. So we're planning to do another condo development there. This is our mission. MACLT liberates land for the benefit of historically marginalized populations at the lowest incomes possible, preserving urban space for community use, and creating deeply and permanently affordable homeownership opportunities for those typically exploited by the housing market. So this is all the ways we support our homeowners. It's one of the things that really makes community land trusts different than other homeownership providers as well. We connect our homeowners to lending partners who are familiar with our model and familiar with working with down payment assistance or other going the extra mile to work with low-income buyers. We have some partners who offer credit coaching, and we also often bring in lenders for educational events for our homeowners, or for potential home buyers who are interested in, things they should know about home ownership or how to build their credit and things like that. So we're often hosting these sort of events, and keeping people connected with us too. For people joining our program, we do an orientation and make sure they're really understanding our model and have access to talking with staff if they have questions. We also require the HUD certified first-time homebuyer course, which is offered from other partner organizations. Make sure they're really understanding the ways they might need to save for home maintenance and things like that. And then, like I've mentioned, we try to make sure we're in communication throughout their homeownership journey. We've connected folks with social services. We have a long list of maintenance contractors who've worked with our homeowners. And we also, because we have a stewardship committee, we can kind of offer a network of support for our homeowners when they have questions. There's all kinds of things that come up, especially when we're working with first generation homeowners whose parents didn't own a home, and they might not know some just simple things like, changing your furnace filter and things like that. So we just try to keep people informed and, answer questions as they have them. One of the things we've been able to do in the last 3 years is we've worked with City of Madison CDBG funding, as well as the one-time ARPA funds from the Dane County Department of Human Services. We've been able to offer funding for minor home repairs and even some larger repairs at the condo associations. So that's one thing that, our staff have been able to apply some of our skills and knowledge of what's out there funding wise for federal funding to really support our homeowners, especially the ones who still remain low income, because that's what a lot of these programs are really for. So that's been very successful. We've distributed almost $1 million just in those 3 years. Oops. This is a quote from one of our homeowners. She moved in 2019, and she just shared her story recently. She's a single mom who is a queer woman of color and actually works in the nonprofit sphere in homeless services. And she said she never thought she would be able to own a home. And she said MACLT has made it possible for me to have a piece of the American dream that I never thought I would be able to have. I finally have peace in my home and can save money to do things like pay off my car, take a vacation, have a garden, pets in the home, and basic things that should be in reach for everyone. So this is really one of those stories that kind of pulls on your heartstrings, just knowing how valuable it is to have the kind of stability it's really not a given anymore. Another thing we've really been doing in the last several years is making sure our policies are really focused on equity. And in 2020, we refocused the way we're selecting applicants in our program to really prioritize equity-based measures. So we have a point system, and we give points for first-generation homeowners, those who are lower income than others who are interested in the same home, as long as they're still spending less than the 30% of their income on housing costs per month. We also have points for higher families, those with disabilities, and those facing a risk of displacement. So that's really helped us reach more low-income families and families of color and single mothers. So since 2020, our statistics, that we're measuring these demographics on, we've kind of increased our reach to those populations. So of our current residents, back at the top of this slide, a little more than half of our current residents are female head of household, and we have 40% families of color. We've been able to reach, since we implemented this policy, we've reached more, like 67% female head of household, 50% families of color, and 50% single mothers. And then we've also lowered our AMI, our average AMI that we're reaching, from close to 65% down to 46% AMI as the average income we've been reaching since we implemented this policy. We also don't require any rental history or background checks, and we do that to really help folks be able to access our program, even if they're especially if they're having trouble getting an apartment. And we don't have any volunteer requirements. So, you know, as soon as you're able to apply and get pre-approved for a mortgage, you know, we prioritize based on these equity measures. This is an example of an acquisition rehab house that we developed last fall, just to show how some of the numbers work. It's a little bit, a lot of numbers on this slide, but this home was appraised at $240,000, and then it needed quite a lot of work. So we worked with Operation Fresh Start to rehab this home. They did some structural things. They rebuilt a garage also, plumbing and, you know, appliances sort of things. And so we invested $92,000 in home rehab, which is the most I think we've maybe ever done. So the total development cost, the total project cost was $332,000. And then we were able to apply $116,000 from the City of Madison's Affordable Housing Fund. And also the seller of this home was willing to sell $30,000 below market rate and take below the appraised value, and take a tax deduction on that bargain sale value. So after all of that, we were able to sell this home for $186,000. That's our sales price that's on their offer, and what's on the settlement statement. But this home buyer was also able to access several layers of down payment assistance, which means we could reach a buyer even lower income than might have been able to buy the $186,000 house. So they were able to get $10,000 from the Federal Home Loan Bank of Chicago, $35,000 from the City of Madison's Home by the American Dream program, and $7,500 from the WIDA Capital Access down payment program. And then this buyer got a lower interest rate mortgage than they might otherwise get. They were able to get a WIDA mortgage. So their first mortgage was just $134,000. So that portion that they're paying interest, and paying their mortgage payments on was down to $134,000. So we were able to sell this home to a family of 5 at 32% area median income. They were making $43,000 a year. So this was a big success for us. And, even without some of the down payment assistance, we could have still reached a family within our range, but it was great to be able to reach a family that really would have had no access to home ownership otherwise. And at the bottom, I show how the 1% formula works over time. So they could sell their house in 2028 for $195,300, and so on. In 2043, they could sell it for $223,200. That's assuming they don't do any capital improvements that they could also gain some credit for on their sales price. I'm getting close to the end, so thanks for bearing with me, but I wanted to mention that we were part of this regional housing strategy where the recent report came out. And I wanted to highlight that one of the strategies is to expand the use of community land trusts. Another big point in the plan is to build 250 affordable single-family homes every year. So that's a big number. That's much more than I know are getting built in Dane County right now. So, and they listed the community land trust as one of the ways to do that. They also said, identifying any publicly owned land that could be developed and included in the local land trust was a good step. building capacity and funding for MACLT was named in the report. And other ways to increase funding to nonprofit housing groups for permanently affordable housing is also in this report. So pretty excited, that these things were highlighted and part of the overall housing strategy plan. So this is how I'm going to end here, is thinking through if there are ways to partner and expand into Waunakee, what would that look like? There's somewhat limited funding for us at the county level. There's, I believe, 500,000 in CDBG and home funds that are kind of set aside for home ownership development. And one piece of that is the CHODO funds, which are about 80,000 per year. And that would be something, the CHODO portion is something we're definitely eligible for, and we would likely be able to access a little more than that. But from my understanding of what's currently available from the county, we would really need matching support from a community within the county to really make a project work, or to do more than one unit. It's possible we could do one unit with county funding if we really figured out a good project and worked with staff to make the funding work for us. But one way to, I'm sure you all are thinking about this, to support more funding at the local level is TID closures into affordable housing funds. And so with that money, thinking through what are the priorities, and if permanent affordability is a priority, setting aside some of those funds or prioritizing it in your RFPs could make a difference. And another thing we've found, helpful is if there are ways to collaborate on site selection and project ideas, or identifying sites, that can be a really beneficial, partnership between a nonprofit and city government or town government as well. So yeah, I'm available for questions again.
All right, thank you very much, Olivia. What questions do we have? I will say we did close a TID 3 and use a portion of that to support LIHTC projects here in town, and second tranche of money from that has gone to support homeowner improvement for people that are at lower income. We call it the Waunakee Housing Betterment Fund. We issued our first round of checks this month, actually, which we've all been very excited about. And so we are having this conversation. We're looking at what comes next. We do anticipate another TID closure, and that it will be extended. And so we're kind of like looking for the best projects available that would help us see on affordability. Madison's expensive, Dane County is expensive, Waunakee is expensive. We all really need to move our folks to live in town and work here in Capitol. Todd, you look like you had a question.
Yeah, real quick. It sounded like you had varying degrees of candidates for housing. How did you develop that list of potential buyers and at the different income levels? Is it just somebody? Are they applying to this in the beginning, or?
I think there's so much need out there that people who are interested in home ownership just hear about all the programs that do it, and we're listed on a few different websites, and we have, I believe, like 250 families on our current interest list that they've submitted their income, it's kind of a self-attestation of their eligibility for that first group. And then from there, once we have a home for sale, is when, if they express like definite interest in a specific home, that's when we start collecting a lot more information on their income and make sure that they're pre-approved for a mortgage and those sorts of things. So it's at that stage that we start prioritizing applicants on a specific house.
Other questions?
I just got one question. It is only one. Can you set this up and identify a class of people? For example, I've been approached about doing something for veterans. So assuming they qualify, can you simply say that veterans can occupy this project? Or do you have to open up to non-veterans as well?
That's a good question. I think it works, but I would have to just refer back to fair housing law to be completely sure. But I'm pretty sure specifically for veterans, I think that could work. If we had, the right number of interested veterans, to be sure that they would want to move in. Yeah.
Other questions? No? Thank you guys. This has been really great. I think we have a lot to talk about and a lot more to learn. And I think we're going to be calling on both of you as we start to contemplate what this could look like and where our funding comes from and how it might work in the community. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Feel free to reach out anytime.
Thank you.
And Kelly, I'll see you tomorrow. Awesome.
And thanks, Kelly, for the great presentation. Oh, she's gone. All right, bye.
Bye.
I work with Kelly.
Business are going on, but really vacation.
Well, any time here in northern Wisconsin, it also feels like vacation.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Take a piece of property and now the village. Well, take it off the tax. Doesn't the county care about that? Doesn't the state care about
Yes.
that?
Yeah.
What happens?
So the village does not own the property.
You're not collecting property.
501c3 owns the property. 501c3 then leases the right to the space for you to build a home on that property. And you pay rent for the land lease and you own the building. And they do that a lot with
They use rents. They pay the property tax there for the state.
No, if I were to, if I qualified and built a home on this land trust property, I'd pay rent,
right?
Possibly to the land trust,
Yeah.
pay rent to the land trust.
So there's no mortgage.
It's going to have some operating costs to cover it, so forth, and we really didn't get into it. But as a homeowner, they will have to pay real estate tax, I believe, just the improvement. Plus, they'll have utilities, and they're going to have insurance.
Right.
And so then they sell it, their number 1% increase every year. So it's pretty simple. What they do is like, okay, I want to buy this unit, and here's the price.
Yeah.
I get that.
It's hard to get the land.
Yeah.
That's the hard part. So you can donate the land to the 501c3, or as I was asking about the investors, an investor will divide the land and then lease it to the land trust, and they lease it.
Land trust is paying the property tax to the property.
But it depends. So it depends, even though it's the letter of the law makes it seem like it wouldn't, from the communities that I've been talking with, it's negotiated community by community, whether or not they pay full taxes on the value of the land in the house. And I think Kelly's point, and I'm going to guess is what the conversation might be up in Shawinigan Bay, is that particularly because there's such small communities in a lot of cases, that the taxes will be charged to the homeowner, even on the land. So that
That's what she said.
She's in Madison's different.
Madison's different, yeah. Yeah.
So I'm just thinking of our workers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now the percent of increase that's going to happen to their property tax because
Yeah.
there's no, it's not.
There's a funding, there's a cost to me, figures to regular real estate taxes to applicants. It's the way I read and understand the law. I'm not a real estate guy. I'm not a real estate assessor or tax attorney or real estate tax attorney. My understanding is what's both owned by 501c3 or owned by a right to the land when I signed that 99-year lease. That land is locked in for 99 years. Because of that, that gives me instant of ownership. Because I have instant of ownership in the land, then that gets assessed with the house. I don't know what the rules on that. That's why real estate attorney.
We need more detail. I think this is our first of many conversations. Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no statutory framework for that.
Yeah, and we want to. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
that tax issue is always going to be there. You're depending on which side you're on. Or,
You're right, Jeff. You take something off the tax roll, like this building, that came off the tax roll, we all had to pay for this building, increased taxes, all else being here.
If we went this direction, would it make sense to partner with the Madison Community Land Trust?
Yeah, I am beginning to think, I thought they had more than 52 homes. I'm surprised because they're such a prominent. Yeah.
Like that's over 30 years.
Yeah. I think let's just see the sheer cost. Nothing happens, maybe. But yeah, we would probably.
Yeah.
well, I think all the time you're talking about, you know, building infrastructure, build 25, you know, I mean, you're obviously always losing, you know, a little bit of control, you know, ultimately direct decision making when you join the larger organization, the benefit there, not needing a separate staff.
I wonder if it had to do with the acute affordability getting worse and worse. So now maybe it's become more popular, but you know, the 20 years, maybe that wasn't such a big deal because people, I don't know.
Well, the thing that was confusing to me was that, like, I understand that the idea we want to think about long-term affordability. It's not just the one person who's getting first time gets subsidized and it's more expensive, but like I'm just thinking about even in like my lifetime, how much my parents spent on their first house in Montague versus what that exact same house is worth today. It's more than a 1% per year. And like now we're talking like double digits now. These houses are going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars less valuable than most of the homes in the community.
And they'll be assessed because of the restrictive agreement.
Right.
On the value of that restrictive agreement. Just like you were in the mortgage review with me for many years. There's a restrictive agreement that depresses the price of the home. It's not marketable, it's not saleable. But imagine though, if we can pull this off and say, okay, Jeff, you own a business in town here, and we're going to put this together, and we're going to have housing for your people. Well, that seems to be like a pretty powerful purpose for your employees. I'm not picking on you, but there's a lot of other things too, and that's where you put this together and you start putting people together. Your initial question is, how do you get the land? And that's where you gotta, is it donated? Is it bought? Is it part of, example, to 6 extension saying, okay, we'll do it, but we want 20 acres.
Yeah.
That might call Habitat for Humanity. How they work. This seems like a partnership that perhaps, you know, a long time ago on this committee, we talked about that.
They will build the homes. I don't know much more than that building the homes.
Yeah, when they came and spoke this past spring, and they talked about a little bit about the home ownership, and then we were asking about rehabilitation of properties as well. One of the things that they said is they don't restrict the future sale price. And there is an argument for that, right? Because this is your single biggest investment in people. So to restrict the sale price, to get you on a home ownership ladder, I totally am behind the idea of paying it forward with this model. But you know, there is a twin argument for Habitat for Humanity that we're going to need people to be able to build equity and then sell at market rate and build million loans.
I think that the concept there is that you are taking a person who is never under current conditions, and their gain buying the house for its appreciated value, 20 years down the road. And we all kind of have that concept, but I think it's more about just simply building the base that they walk away from it. They have a fund that they never would have had if they were doing that. So we're all thinking from the standpoint of, money down and go and buy your house. And, that's the great American way, right? I think we're trying to address a segment of our population that doesn't participate. So I think, we have to alter our thinking a little bit to understand what we're trying to
just question is one of the key questions, initial questions. Then you get a whole bunch of other questions. Your question is the key is how do you get the land? And there's ways to get that. Whether it's saying as part of the TID extension or the TID processing, or the 1-year TID extension helps pay for the land. Somehow someone's got to pay for whatever is left that's not, or give it, not give it to the projects. And they never asked, answer the question. They paid X dollars to get those properties, and then they sold those properties. Where'd that money come from to buy the property? Is it when they resold the property? And
they did talk to them too. They had a few different categories.
Yes, that's why I have a lot of questions on the logistics of what they did and how they're doing it. But it's a diagram. You just put on a piece of paper and you work off that, and you got to be fluid with how it works. People have to understand the concept. That's why when I read that 189 pages, it was overwhelming. I was confused. So in the end, I put this little chart together and figured this is what's got to look like.
One step closer, right? All right, we've got 15 minutes left before Jeff and I have to take off various parts of the north. I put together an update. Let's perhaps go over in detail today on the housing task force, what we've accomplished. I'll just say that if you open it up, it came yesterday. Thank you for sending that out. Step 2 last weekend. Like, how can we do this meeting already? But there is a brief update of kind of the major things that we've accomplished under each one of the recommendations. You'll note there are some things in here that we have not done. We have not done a study on senior housing. I don't know that that's something we want to put on our agenda for this year or wait until next year. I feel like community land trust might serve a broader section of the community than just seniors. But that is one of the things. And then the 2 other things at the bottom of the recommendation were around homeowner education and buyer education. And we've just not prioritized that for focus to that community level effort. So we do have a new communication director that started 3-4 months ago. April, yeah. So it's very new. A lot of what is available across the county, we can post on the website and we can get that material. We have to probably get that in the fall. But those are kind of the major things. And then I put some information in there on what the economic landscape looks like in terms of homeownership and rental and some of the census data that's come out in the past couple of years. We have talked a lot about employment and housing, and so there is commuter data in there for in and out commuting patterns. That also, as we're going forward, we're talking about a lot of things that make that kind of perspective in mind. Who's in our community is the same kind of here. So with that, do we have any suggestions for the good of the cause or anything else we'd like to talk about today? Wait, I didn't mean to select my agenda. What else do we have on the agenda?
Housing Betterment Fund.
Housing Betterment Fund. Thank you.
Housing task force. We should do something with that.
Yeah, and then we'll talk about it next time.
Okay.
So this is just I was going to do the thing. It does this to me every time. It's things that were discussed at prior meetings, and we're just kind of condensing it all into one update. Wanted to run you through what we did, which is stuff that we've already talked about, but wanted to, so you're aware it's in here, and you can make any edits as you need to, and and pass it either as is or with a few edits. So under program details, we added that the maximum amount that will be awarded under the program each year will be $150,000, which is discussed at the May meeting. A couple things that, other than some language cleanup, we changed some language under what is considered a complete application. So we had been asking for what it originally said was an itemized list of costs associated with the grant, but what we ended up getting was like, I bought 847 shingles and I used 846 of them. And that's not necessarily the level of detail that we need. We just need to know I bought shingles and used them. So changing it to language that says labor and materials necessary, and then if multiple projects are being completed as part of the grant, each project and associated costs are listed separately. Some clarifications about who needs to fill out the W-9 form and for whom. And when it comes to proof of income, what we found out early on is we originally said pay stubs in this program, but not everyone has pay stubs. So what are we taking as now what we call a signed statement regarding non-filing of taxes and proof of income. And then the last thing that we have in here specifically is updating the scoring chart to change the if I can zoom in a little bit. I'm gonna zoom in a lot. Under household income, the different scoring sections to match what the HUD guidelines say, so we don't have to do any kind of extra behind the scenes. And then we did come up with, and I forgot to pull this up, and we can put this on for a future meeting because we are running out of time. But we also created a draft emergency program. So if someone came to us, one of the issues that came up in the last meeting was, well, if your HVAC is still working, what's the need to replace it? But someone's probably not going to wait 2 months for this program review period to come along if their HVAC isn't working. So what does an emergency funding program look like and who is in charge of it and those kinds of things. So that was included in the packet. And something that you can look over and we can address another time, so we don't need to do the emergency one here. But is everyone okay with the proposed changes to the program that we just ran through?
I think goes back to our original discussion that you needed an authorized certified contractor to do the work. You can't buy shingles and come to us and say.
Yeah, so that's been in there since before we put the program into place in March.
So are we still saying that somebody's going to do improvements, it's going to be needed to make bids and
yes.
Process through contracting?
Yeah. Yes, licensed and bonded, they do this as a profession. Oh, no, when we were talking for reimbursements, when we were asking for itemized receipts from the contractors, the contractor would say, I purchased so many shingles or so much plywood, and we didn't need that level of detail.
On page 5, when you say the maximum amount that will be awarded for this program each year to eligible applicants, $850,000, comma, subject to program funding.
Okay.
What if we run out of funding?
Well, I think that's why it says the maximum. It's not saying that we will award up to that amount. That's the maximum amount that would be awarded per year.
The other one is like a little surprise, maybe I should, but attest to their income. I don't know what was that. I'm trying to read through some other point I had, which I forgot. When the proof of income, is there a a statement under perjury of law?
Yes.
That they sign?
Yes.
Like a tax return? Says that you signed this return under perjury of law?
Yes. So we've run it through the attorney because we had a couple people who applied that are sole proprietors. They don't even necessarily use something like QuickBooks. It's just a handwritten ledger of this is what my income and expenses are. And so we worked with the village attorney to come up with an attestation that says, under penalty of law, this is, to the best of my record keeping and my knowledge, this is what my income is for this period. Yep.
I had a couple things. I think I noticed a typo on page 8 under letter B. It says itemized description of the proposed estimated cost for of. Probably just for or of.
Okay, you will clean that up.
Okay. And then the second question I had was, I think it was Al that brought this up about something with hail damage and roof and making sure that this housing betterment fund wasn't going to be dispersed in a situation where the insurance would cover it.
So we added something to the application, which was also in the packet, asking if they were going to be seeking or receiving any external funding aside from this program, whether that's insurance reimbursements or county CDBG funds or something like that, so that we have a record that we're not over reimbursing someone for a project out of this fund.
And I'm going to go a step further in that, because, example, the IRS said, if you have a casualty loss and you choose not to claim insurance, you can't take the deduction. If you chose not to, so are you not eligible for reimbursement? As opposed to you're not seeking reimbursement, is the link. Eligible as you could, but you chose not to. So that's what
that would be up to you.
Oh, that's what I'm suggesting.
I'll say I will.
But the eligibility of it, you're not eligible for other reimbursements of the expense.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yes, partially because that's the way the system works, and partially because she spent 9 years as a paralegal.
You had to check her neck up.
Yeah.
One last question I had was on that scoring matrix at the end, defining livability.
Yes. So that was a discussion that you guys had at the last meeting, that if we could define livability under very specific terms, which could be what I think the USDA has, HUD has, which is like complete plumbing, complete kitchen facilities. Or do you want to be more flexible with it and just define your own definition of livability? But if you do go ahead and define your own definition of livability, we probably should have a discussion about what that definition is, so that way it's equally applied across all grants and grant cycles.
It's a historic.
No, it is a very low bar compared to the housing stock in Waunakee. It would be considered a very low bar.
Yeah, and that would be worth a future conversation about, because, you know, I mean, I did the kitchen facilities, yeah. Or window, but you know,
part of it was directed around that. We're going to put a new window in. People asked, did it do much for the house number? It didn't increase the livability because the other part of the house was shape. So I think that was part of it, that we're really putting money into something that's a waste of time.
It would be better used elsewhere.
Yeah.
Complete renovation.
Yeah.
Got it, redo it.
I mean, I think the reality is Yeah.
That's why I think having a definition that we, as a committee, agree on, either we're going with HUD or we're gonna go with our element rewrite would be helpful.
Can we do a hybrid?
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely much better working bathroom, no freaking kids.
Yeah.
Part of it. There doesn't be effort that has to be made to get there. Otherwise, it's just.
Maybe August agenda?
Yep.
All right, and do you need us to make a motion to approve with the exception of, a statement about insurability?
Eligibility.
Yeah, no, we don't. I don't think we're gonna approve this tonight. We're gonna come back defining livability and other things. That's the expectation.
Do we need to approve it tonight so that we can go forward to the next round in September, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So approving the changes that are currently in it, including the comment about eligibility, leaving the other conversations for the next meeting.
I make a motion that we approve the changes as listed with the exception of including a statement about insurance. Eligibility for insurance.
Eligibility for reimbursement. I'm just talking insurance.
For reimbursement. Eligibility for reimbursement. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. All right, and then next month, we will talk about livability and the definition, and we can get our next round of applications.
Yep.
The date of the
Next meeting, August.
Peter? I'll be moving in.
Okay, last.
If we said actually reschedule it, it would be really great, because that's our move in, move out days, which is chaotic.
Yeah. Week before, week after.
week before we do that.
Week after. I mean, I remember last year, the first 2 weeks of August.
I could do.
All right. Last Wednesday in August?
Yeah, that would.
Total.
Which one? Last Wednesday. August 28th.
Perfect. So last thing is motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
I think we should stick around for a while.
It's so much fun talking about land trust.
Yeah. Like it all right.
Yeah.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Good discussion tonight. I feel like we're one step closer to